Let's link up with Krysta on the FYX. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
Give me your 30 to 45 second. I'm not going to time you. People get nervous when I put that on there. Not going to time you. What is your elevator pitch? Like, who are you? And more importantly, like, why the heck should we care about Keyen and what he's up to?
Yeah, I'm the genie. When everybody asks what I do, I say I'm the genie. I'm the guy that people rub the lamp when they're ready to see me and meet me. I show up in their life.
I love
They rub
that.
the lamp, right? They rub the lamp. I come out and they have 2 to 3 things that they really want with their life, and I make it happen for them.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. We're going to have to talk about like manifestation and that stuff too, because I feel like that probably plays a part in the work that you do. And second, I already know the answer, so I'm going to reframe it. But as everyone knows, I'm a huge coffee drinker. I launched my coffee line just by the time we've recorded this, it'll have been out for like about a week. And I had my first blend of beans actually from Brazil. But I'm told that Keyen is not a coffee drinker. It is okay. I would love to know what it's like to be in Brazil and not drink coffee. So that's part one to the question. But part two is instead, what is your morning routine? Do you drink something else? Tea, matcha? You just like a straight up water guy? Like, what's your vibe?
Yeah, I honestly, people drink coffee here, but I feel like when I lived in Colombia, it was much more prevalent, like everywhere. Cafe, 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 cafe. But it's interesting because they don't say breakfast here. They say cafe de mañana. So it's coffee of the morning is what they call breakfast. So coffee is very popular here in Brazil, obviously, because it's in the name of breakfast.
Right.
So I'm not a big drinker, but in the morning, I'm pretty plain with it. I love just drinking a lot of water.
Okay.
That's what I do. So
have you ever been a coffee drinker or you like never got into it?
I never could get into it. I was big in the fitness industry for a while down in Miami, and I think it's huge. Like coffee is really
good for
really
your metabolism, all that. Yeah,
exactly. But I feel like I don't metabolize caffeine very well, so when I drink it, I get like a huge up, and then I just go fade off. So it just doesn't really do much for me.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I get that. Yeah, it's all good. We won't judge you. We'll just move along to the next question. No, I'm kidding. But I totally understand that. So let's get right into it. You living in Brazil currently. I do want to talk about your path as to how you got here and probably approach this from like a little bit more of a chronological order. So let's start with football. Let's talk about your experience in professional sports. Tell me about, were you the kid that was like, you got your hands in a football at age 2 and your parents knew that it was going to be your thing? Or like, how did you get to where you were? And then we'll move more into your transition of what you've been up to between the fitness scene that you were really deeply dove into initially, and now your transition into more of your mental health and kind of probably like a holistic wellness approach.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And I am definitely, I do follow suit with had a football in my hands, and my parents knew right away.
That's so cool.
But it wasn't necessarily my parents. It was more so me. I knew. I remember
really?
in third grade, my teacher told me right when I had the opportunity to play in the NFL, she called my mom and said, "Hey, I remember when Keyen was in third grade and he drew the picture on the wall saying he was going to go to the NFL." So that was my lifelong dream.
You were manifesting at age 9. I love it.
I was. It was crazy. When I was back home too, a couple of weeks ago, my little brother, he remembers when I was in high school, him asking me a question. We were talking about this, and he said, "Keyen, are you going to go to the NFL?" And I was just like, "Yeah."
And you just were like, "Yep, I'm going."
Yeah. And I don't remember that conversation, but yeah, it was definitely deeply rooted in me that I had the conviction to know that I was for sure. But I ended up getting there and actually never got to play a game due to a neck injury I had.
Okay.
So I was in camp with Kansas City and New Orleans Saints, and then I got cut by both, and then I got signed the third preseason game into my first year, and found out that on a precautionary MRI before I got to play that my neck condition that I had from college was much worse than I thought. So right there, and never got to actually play in a game. So it was a quick ending, abrupt ending, but it was beautiful because it was exactly what I needed to move on to a different area of my life.
Did it feel like that in the moment? How long has it taken you to realize that?
I transitioned pretty quickly, and I think historically quicker than I probably is healthy for
Okay.
me. So I would say there's definitely a lot of suppression of the feelings that I had, which I've been able to process through a lot
Sure.
through the last however many years. But I definitely cried my eyes out. Oh my gosh, I cried my eyes out that night when I got the news, and the next couple of days, and I went back home. And after about 2 days, my parents' basement, I'm like, all right, I want nothing to do with my finance degree that I went to school for.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to go do something else. And that's when I decided to go to the library and just read for about a month straight. But we can talk more about that. But I'm very good at transitioning very quickly. And I think many men, very masculine men, tend to be that way too.
Yeah.
And
block it out. Pretend like
block it out, right? It's not there. However many years of saying I want to do this thing, let me just like have one day of crying and that's it.
Yeah.
But so I transitioned relatively quickly.
That's good. I mean, I'll say good for you in the regard of from the perspective of someone who had a hard time making certain transitions like that in my life. Like in some ways I'm envious of people who've been able to do that. But I asked you the question, like in the moment, were you happy about how you moved on from it? Because like hindsight, of course, it's 2020 and it's so much easier to say that like several years or months or whatever amount of time removed from it. And I in my own personal relationships, when I moved on from my last relationship, I dwelled on it for months. And it still wasn't me. But in kind of like looking back at the situation, it was what I needed at the time. And even though there were moments that it sucked and I felt like I was never going to get through it, and I had so much negativity just like swirling around my brain, and all of my energy felt fixated on something that I just couldn't make a decision on, and it was so not my personality. I'm like super decisive most of the time. I have to say that I think if I had gone through it differently, I don't know if I would be where I am at right now and have the same lessons learned from that experience, much to how you're probably saying to yourself, like, you know what, I moved on really quick, but I could have handled it a slightly different way and maybe I would have learned X, Y, Z. So it's interesting to pause and think about that kind of stuff because I don't think we do it enough.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. And then we can dive more into the emotional side of things because that's what I specialize in now.
Very cool.
And my own journey with that. But
Cool.
Definitely. And so I transitioned quickly, and I decided to get into what I thought was something that I was really familiar with, which was, mastering the external part of my physical body. I was a freak. I was 230 pounds, was 8.5% body fat.
How tall are you?
6'3".
Okay.
So,
wow.
I could jump through the ceiling. I hold a basketball underneath the basketball hoop and jump up and dunk two hands. Like I hit my physical peak. So I thought, and that's where halfway into the first year of me doing personal training, I realized that there's a lot more to health than just the external part of it. And although I was a freak externally, internally, I definitely wasn't. I was gassy all the time, really bloated. My energy was kind of like
up and down. Yeah.
My sleep was spotty. And I definitely wasn't as healthy internally as I would have liked to be. So that's when I got obsessed about learning about internal health, what that looked like for me. And after about 2 months of doing that, I realized I could not be in South Dakota anymore. And I moved to Miami with a good buddy of mine and started personal training there and became the go-to person for all things internally health related at a gym called Equinox in Miami.
That's really cool. And I love that I think it sounds like you probably picked up on that like earlier than the quote unquote trend, right? I don't know what year you made that transition. But I think I'm slowly starting to see more of that among coaches, that there is so much emphasis on having abs and a six pack and whatever. And this is kind of actually what I got into on my show with Drew Manning when we were talking about his process of intentionally putting on 65 plus pounds twice in his life. And he said this time around, it really tested his mental health. But more importantly, I'd love your take on this point that he made, because I never thought about it, but I think it's genius now that he said it. Most people who are overweight and more specifically like struggling to lose weight, they don't know what healthy feels like. they may know what it looks like, but they've never experienced it themselves. And also their standard of what it looks like is like, you know, washboard abs, jacked biceps, and just like this ideal that not a lot of people can achieve, especially if you're dealing with like a ton of inflammation, which like you said, there's a reason why you said I was a freak. Like if you were having some of the side effects that you were describing, there's a lot of inflammation going on in the body. And for someone who is taking it to the level of like bikini competitions and that sort of thing, that shit can fuck up your hormones and mess with all that stuff. But guess what? It could be the difference of like that 1 or 2% body fat that you just can't get rid of. So it's like a really interesting contrast. But I'm curious what you think about this idea of like, people who struggle to lose weight, they don't know how good it feels to like feel healthy and like feel like they can just like get out of bed with a lot more energy. And so for them, they don't really know what they're working towards. Like there's no like light at the end of the tunnel in the sense of like, I'm going to feel so much better when I lose X amount of weight. And you have to love yourself in the moment as who you are in that current weight, just as much as you anticipate that you're going to feel better. That's a whole nother like rabbit hole we could go down. But I'm wondering what your perspective is on that, because I've never thought about it before. But it's like when I gain 15 pounds, like I just like feel like bleh. But there's people who have literally their whole lives, their family was unhealthy. They've become unhealthy. They don't prioritize movement. So they're never going to know how positive of an influence that could be on their life.
100%. I think it's a phenomenal question too. And I want to go to my current coaching and what it is. And I think we can tie back to that because I think it's really important to explain it. But a lot of people think that the path to being joyous, the path to being happy, or the path to getting exactly what we want is found through consciously trying to be happy, through consciously trying to be joyous, through consciously trying to get what we want. But really, it's not about us trying to be happy. It's about us being able to experience and make love to our sadness and our frustration and our anger inside of us, what a famous psychotherapist, Carl Jung, calls the shadow part of ourselves. So there's a part of ourselves, the pain, the hurt that we don't like to address and don't like to confront. And actually confronting that part of ourselves, the part that we don't like to associate or identify with, is the thing that's going to allow us to become more happier and more joyous. Because when we can make love to that part of ourselves that we resist to allow to show up, there's no longer this discrepancy inside the self that causes the mental disconnect that we're experiencing. So I would say it's the same thing in the nutritional space as well, is understanding that, hey, in order for me to get healthy and to actually understand what health truly is, because clearly I've never been able to experience it myself, I have to know that it's going to be terrible. I'm going to confront so many demons in the process of getting to that place to even feel good, because my body's going to resist all the change. So if I can make love to all the pain and the wherewithal of understanding that it's going to be really shitty in the process of starting to become healthy, then the cool part is when we can make love to that part of the process of the shittiness of the change, right? Because our brains will always reject change regardless if it's good or bad, right? If we can do that, then on the other side of making love to that part of the process is much quicker results, right? So instead of just focusing on the other side of it of this one day I could feel so good, if we can fall in love with the pain associated with the beginning part of the process of getting healthy, then that allows for the health to emerge much quicker. Right. Because what we resist,
I love that.
Will persist for sure.
Right. I love that parallel that you drew to like the Drew's example was almost like the physical. And then you kind of took it exactly into the mental piece of it and just reaffirms my point that they are so tied. Right. And I think you experienced that personally, which probably explains your transition in your coaching. You were like, I feel really great on the outside and I look the way that everyone has deemed to be like super healthy, but it's like all this other stuff and these consequences that are going on inside, it doesn't align. So like, am I doing this the right way? And you know, I'm really curious to what you just said about change. And I'd love for you to tie that into your personal story. Because as you said, no one likes change, whether it's good or bad. And I 100% agree with that statement. I've never heard a truer statement. Because it can be scary and uncomfortable. And I think everything you're saying to me gets summed up really well with the term vulnerability and like us needing to tap into that vulnerability in a very like Brene Brown way of looking at it. But I want to know how you have face change in your life, and it sounds like maybe your relationship with change has evolved because of the comment you made about how you just quickly moved on from football. Maybe you don't transition as fast in your mind as you did previously, but you've moved a lot, right? And you've moved to countries with really different cultures and have interacted with lots of different types of people. So even just you could talk about it broadly with career changes and everything, but I'm curious in the context of like you physically changing by changing your environment, what that has been like for you and how you now transition that into your coaching as a way to teach people what you've learned from that experience.
I would say I'm not like the normal person when it comes to change.
Okay.
I really don't think so. I've been, my whole life, I've been able to adapt very well to change and knowing exactly what I need to do to get what it is that I want. So I think at a very young age, I was able to understand change and what it is. But I would also say to a fault, in a sense. I growing up, I would say I was a chameleon in a lot of ways, and I could blend into any group that I needed to fit in or to be seen as highly, right? So I would say I'm very good at change in the way that I'm just been so used to operating in that place of knowing what exactly I need to do, who I need to be to get what I want.
Yeah.
So I would say that I follow more in that category where I've got really good at.
That's super. I'm like smiling really big and kind of laughing because I had a conversation with a close friend of mine about being a chameleon in business and why that's actually very effective and important. And then it came up in the exact word of being a chameleon also came up in a conversation that I had with my therapist. And she said, she made a really interesting point that, and another friend of mine said the same exact thing. And I don't even think the two of them like knew that we both had this conversation, of course. But they were on the same wavelength. That was weird. We've like demonized being a chameleon as if it's like a bad thing. But the therapist made a good point. It's not, like, because it's almost like a self-preservation kind of tactic. Like you are being a chameleon because it's going to protect what you need, and in your way of protecting yourself and kind of defending yourself. And I think even it can come off as negative because of this idea that like you're either hiding something, or secondly, like you're using a certain side of you because you want something. And I think there's a negativity associated with people like wanting something, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because like it's everybody wants something. Like we all want things, like our desire makes us human, right? So have you ever thought about that, and like how have you grappled with that personally? Like how do you take the negative connotation with that term?
Yeah, well first it's gotten me a lot of incredible things in my life. Right. It's allowed me to be super open and receptive to change. It's allowed me to be really open and receptive to hearing expertise of other people. Like when I know somebody is doing what I've done, or what I want to do, I latch on. I'm like, okay, listen. So it's gotten me a lot of phenomenal things. And I don't disagree with the fact that, yeah, it can get us a lot of really incredible things. But you mentioned self-preservation. And I think what can happen is when we get so good at blending in with what we need to be to get what we want, that we can lose, or I would say we have never really gained a sense of true identity in ourselves.
Sure.
And I think that's where a lot of disconnect can happen with ourselves, and unhappiness can emerge because there's not a solid foundation in our relationship with us.
Self, yeah.
Right, with self, right? So there is both sides to it. And I would say that the best thing that a chameleon by nature, or I would say by adaptation, adoption of life circumstances.
Yeah.
It's important to be able to find a certain level of oneness with the self, where we find what we want and commit to what we want without the feelings and concerns and thoughts of everybody else.
Other people.
Right. Yeah. So that's one of the most powerful things that we can do.
Yeah. And the same person who made the comment to me initially about being a chameleon, also said that it's taken them like 10 years to figure out who they are. And they're much older than I am. And, the comment that they made was more specifically like, I don't give a fuck about what other people think about me. And I'm not just saying that. Like I truly do not care. And I think that's a very hard thing to achieve. Like, and I'm wondering what your relationship with that journey has been for you. Like, do you feel, from what I've heard so far, I feel like third grader Keyen kind of knew who he was, because you seem to have, like, I asked you the question about football and you're like, yep, I knew I was going to do it. So do you think that's something you were innately born with, or it's something you've worked at? And do you think that it's because of your experiences and your comfortability with change that you've kind of made the realization at the end of the day, we only have ourselves? And I think that's the one thing that people forget. It's like we look to the external so much for validation, like finding it in a partner. People are uncomfortable being single. I have had the most transformative experience mentally by not having a partner, because I only had to worry about me. And I spent so much time worrying about other people that it like distracted me from myself and my relationship with myself.
Well, that's definitely a loaded gun, because I've done a lot of psychoanalysis on myself of why I am the way I am and everything. And there's definitely a beautiful side and a darker side. I say inside of every gift that we have was born from a trauma. And it's our job and duty to be able to work through the trauma, so we're able to be in the gift and show the world the gift to the highest capacity. And for people that are people pleasers by nature, which I would call the people that you're talking about as a chameleon, it's really important to be able to establish a sense of self and spend a season of life in the fuck you, I don't care what anybody thinks part of it, because it's a balancing pendulum act. Right. If we're in this place of chameleonizing and saying, hey, like, I care what other people think, that's actually guiding my decision-making process. I put a lot of my self-worth on my ability to be able to make other people feel good. It's important to go the other end of the direction, which is fuck everybody. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm just going to be independent and autonomous and maybe do the opposite of what everybody else thought that I was, right? For me, a lot of my identity was wrapped up. I was from a relatively small town. I knew who I was. I was the good guy.
In that environment, right?
In that environment. Exactly. So leaving that environment can be really, really powerful, especially for a people pleaser. But actually, it's on the same vibrational plane as that, though. So what a lot of people do is they'll be in this chameleonizing place, and then they'll go from here
all the way
to here. Fuck everybody. Fuck everybody else thinks. And actually, they'll do a lot of things just to rebel against this identity or this way of being. So they go over here, and a lot of people get stuck here, right? But we don't realize that this is actually on the same plane of consciousness, right? So it's important to experience this element of things of fuck everybody. I want to do whatever I want to do. But what this is also doing is it's still kind of driven by the opinions and thoughts of other people, because it's the opposite of what they were initially, which isn't their own idea of what they want for themselves. Right.
So like would you say that middle portion is like really where you find what you want for yourself? Like, how do you find that?
Yeah, I suppose that would imply that it's important to be in the middle ground. And I think by that thinking process, saying, okay, I want to get back to the middle, actually gets in the way of being able to healthfully go through the full spectrum.
Okay.
And I also want to say this, is that it's not just like, okay, this part of my life I'm here, this part of my life I'm here,
right?
This part of my life I'm here.
There's
this constant process. And most of the time, the coolest part about, I think one of the coolest parts about what I do is we're able to identify the season of life that we're in, so we can just own it to its entirety.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
And so if somebody is in a season where they're like starting to feel like, okay, I'm feeling congested, I'm feeling bogged down, I'm feeling like I'm drained because I'm just doing a lot of things that aren't really in alignment with what I want with my life. You mentioned, the white picket fence and it's settling down, having kids right away. And you're like, holy shit, that's not what I want. And I feel like a lot of people have that, but you were courageous enough to give yourself permission to get out of that circumstance.
Right. And I realized in sharing my story, and I wonder if you've been through this as you've become more open with what you've experienced, and now coaching other people and asking them or giving them the opportunity to share what they've experienced. Like, I didn't feel courageous in doing it because I just felt like I let so many people down and I felt guilty. And that was probably the whole like pleasing other people speaking. But when
Krysta, that's the first 20 pounds of weight loss right there.
Yeah.
And that's what it is for you.
Exactly.
Going through the tension associated with the change of potentially letting the people down around you.
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah. It was super uncomfortable. 100%. Yeah. You're right. Very good connection. And then when I finally talked about it, I can't tell you how many people people I haven't talked to in years, people I knew in a professional setting as their coach, but didn't know about their personal life, people that were complete strangers on social media, just from like one post I did where I was like super open and honest, recorded a video, talked for like 12 minutes. It was cathartic for me, and I didn't give a shit if anyone was going to watch it or not. I just felt like I had something to say. If it helped one person, cool. But it was like, I wasn't doing it for someone to be like, oh, you're so courageous. I actually felt kind of sad at how many people didn't make the decision that I did. And they told me, like, they said, they even worded it this way, which I feel bad. Like, they were like, I wish I made the decision you had at 20 something, because now I'm 30 something or 40 something and I'm paying for it because I'm unhappy. I'm going through separation. I'm going through divorce, or I was married before, and good for you because this is the best decision you're going to make and you won't have to deal with divorce and this and that and the other thing. What do you think about that part of it? Like, how in the moment, and probably it's that tension that you were describing, like I thought I was making the worst decision ever, right? And like making all these people disappointed. But now it's very interesting to see the type of person that like receives it as you just did and said, like, good for you. Like, that's a compliment. Like, I joked when I first started sharing my story, I would always tell people like, hey, this is what happened to me, finish the explanation and go, please don't say sorry, I'm happier. And some people always wanted to say, I'm really sorry you went through that. But I don't want anybody to be sorry. Like, I want people to be like, good for you. So I don't know. Why do you think that some people can look at it the one way where they're like, I'm sorry that happened to you. And other people are like, hell yeah. Like, kind of like the whole like girl power sort of take on it.
Well, I think how we respond is definitely a projection of the sum of our life experience. So that's going to be the reason why people respond in one way or another. But I believe the reason why it's so difficult for people to be able to make that decision, like you did at the age that you did, and why other people haven't been able to do it. I would say the majority of people haven't been able to do it in their life is because of this idea that everybody always has to have it all together. We all have to have our shit together. We should know what we want. We should know what we want with our life. We should know exactly where we're going, right? Because society glorifies that.
Yeah,
society glorifies this decisive understanding of what I want and where I'm going. But if people would just give themselves permission for just 1 second to say, hey, it's okay for me to not know what I want, and I'm gonna allow myself just to feel that. But once again, it's very difficult to do because what is that doing? It's stepping into the unknown and stepping out of
that vulnerability,
right? The comfort, right? The vulnerability, the comfort of knowing who we are, right? Who we are, who we all believe we are. And what we do is we just continue to follow that path of who we believe we are based off of the sum of our life circumstances, not ever giving ourselves permission to step out of who we believe we are and to say, hey, I don't know what I want, and that's okay. Let me just sit in that for a little while and allow that the feelings associated with not knowing what I want emerge, right? So I need to address those feelings. So those feelings will need to be addressed, right? Because there's discomfort there. Right? And then on the other side of that discomfort will emerge inspiration, right? And that inspiration might not be, and it probably won't be the thing that's right for you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right. But it will be something that's going to get you closer to understanding what it is that you want with your life. And a lot of times what we have to do is we got to figure out what we don't want.
I really want to know from you just describing exactly what you just walked me through, what are the actual mechanics and activities of the type of work that you do with your clients to lead to these conversations between the two of you? Or just to get them to make these realizations on their own. So like, what does coaching with Keyen actually like look like and feel like? If I was going to call you tomorrow and be like, hey, I want to work with you. I want to work on my mental health in the context of being a business owner. How can we collaborate? Tell me more about that.
Well, to sum it up, a coaching experience with me is a psychedelic experience. I don't know if you've ever done psychedelics before or experimented in that space, but that's what most people describe it as, even if they've never done psychedelics before. So I don't address the mental part of things. I'm not a mindset coach. I'm not a mental coach. I address the emotions. And ultimately that's what causes change to happen in anybody. Because most of the people that work with me, they've read a lot of books. They've listened to a lot of podcasts.
Right. Or it's like they're coming to you and they're like, I have all this knowledge up here. Like I need to think about it differently sort of thing. Is it like almost out of frustration a little bit?
Yeah, a lot of it is, and they've gone to therapy, they've
Mhm.
experienced counseling, and they've become so, because they are into mental health and
Right.
knowing, right, how to heal,
Yes.
right? So they become very, very aware of the issues that they're
Yeah.
experiencing,
Hyper aware. I've
right?
definitely
Hyper aware,
experienced
right?
that.
Hyper
Yeah.
aware of their issues, hyper aware
Mhm.
of the things they need to work
Yeah.
through. But because they've stayed on the mental plane of consciousness and haven't gone to the emotional states that they need to be able to actually release the reason why they are the way they are in the first place, right? We can't fix a problem with the thing that got us there in the first place, right? Because our brain in the mental space is what taught us that we have to be a certain way to be able to accept and receive love. So,
Right.
so we can't use the mechanism that got us to this place out of good
Because it's
intent,
trying
I
to
want to
like
say,
protect us, right?
right? Out of good
Yeah.
intent, right? Our
Mhm.
brains did that out of good intent to try to
Sure.
protect us,
Yeah.
right? To be able to receive love and be taken care of, right? But in order for us to be able to undo a lot of that programming that we have, it has to come through experiencing a lot of emotion that we didn't let ourselves experience, right? And so,
Okay.
what is a young child does? A young child goes mental in the face of experiencing excessive emotions, because if that child is experiencing emotions, they're not in a safe place to be able to express them.
Right. Because we're
What happens?
taught
They could
to,
die,
yeah, we're not
right? They don't
taught
get
to
taken care
lean
of,
into that. Yeah.
right? But
Mhm.
it's I don't even know if it's taught. We just don't have the capacity to be able to at those
Okay.
young ages,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Like
the people that are
you're not emotionally mature enough to, and then the people that are
exactly,
raising you, if they went through that same cycle and they never addressed it, how are they equipped to help you?
for sure,
Not.
and
Yeah.
very rarely are we ever going to find that.
Yeah.
Now, one of that, like, right, like our parents have no idea,
They don't.
and bless our parents' heart, like they oh, everybody, our parents, I'll make the person. My parents were incredible, are incredible. Oh my gosh, I've gotten so much from them, right? But they didn't have the opportunity to work through their own emotional shit,
Mhm.
right? They didn't have somebody like me in their life to be able to actually guide them through the process of resolving and dealing with their own emotional
Sure.
stuff, right? And so that's the power, I feel like, of what I do is it ends the cycle of a lot of emotional hurt that ends up getting passed down generation after generation. And so what I do is all the emotion that we haven't allowed ourselves to feel and experience because of the push down effect,
Yep.
right? Because I'm not safe to feel this, I'm not safe to experience this. We go in and experience and feel that emotion, so we're no longer controlled by our emotions,
Okay.
right? And so a lot of people think that, you know, the Stoic movement, this mental movement of suppression of emotions and not letting our emotions control us, is the thing that we should be doing. But actually, it's not controlling and suppressing. That's actually contributing to the issues that we're having and the
Yeah.
lack of happiness people are experiencing.
Sure. And I think if you really, I don't know if you listen to Ryan Holiday much with his Daily Stoic and his takeaways, I actually think he would 100% agree with your statement that it's actually about like the term to me, like the verb that just keeps coming to my head is like leaning into the emotion, and like you're saying, sit with it. I think he would agree that some of the lessons you can take away from the Stoics are to address it and acknowledge it for what it is. And I think that's the part that people really struggle with because they don't have guidance on how to do that.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a very difficult task for somebody to sit there and to say,
Yeah.
okay, I'm feeling this, and then to let themselves like go through the process of crying and
Right.
expressing extreme rage and
Yeah.
anger. And people don't do that because,
It
and
makes
what you're
me think
talking
of like
about,
like because we were talking about psychedelics, it just
yeah,
and this is probably like a stereotypical answer, but it makes me think of like ayahuasca. Never done it, but I have watched a lot of videos, or like I think of like, I didn't Anthony Bourdain do it on one of his episodes before he passed away? I feel like he did.
maybe I've done it 4 times.
Okay. So do you think that like, would you equate the sensations and process that you're describing to an experience that ayahuasca can create for somebody?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. But that's I'm not saying every experience has to be an ayahuasca type of experience, but
Sure. Because that's
in the
very deep and
beginning
it can
though,
be very intense. Yeah.
for sure, and it is
Yeah.
very intense. But that's why I say everybody before they start to work with me, I say three things that you need. You need a glass of
Okay.
water, you need a
Okay.
box of tissues, and you need a pillow if you need to muffle yourself in case there's people that are around you where you have to
Mhm.
express extreme rage and frustration. Right. So every person that I work with, they come to the call with that, a
Yep.
space where they can express anything
Okay.
that comes up and wants
Okay.
to be expressed, but also the tissues to be able to cry. Right. I've
Yeah.
had people that I've worked with that haven't cried in 13, 15, 20 years
Wow.
break down and start to cry. Now it's a process of really doing
Yeah.
that. But I mean, I get guys that are the like, big time CEOs, business owners
Mhm.
that finally get on board with this idea and concept that the only way for them to truly get what they want, to have the fulfillment that comes with all their accomplishments, and to continue to achieve at the level they want to achieve, their own emotional hurt has to be addressed, right? And that's why I'm perfect for the job, because I'm not a long-haired hippie. Not saying there's anything wrong with long hair. I had long hair, and I was long-haired hippie for a little while, actually, after my football was done. I went through a season, right? But I'm not that, right? So I'm not saying, hey, dude, you need to be in touch with your emotions.
Yeah, it's not like a woo-woo.
Yeah, it's not. It's actually very scientific and very pragmatic, which is the fantastic part about it. But I'm sitting here. I was a gladiator, played in the NFL. Never got to play a game, but made it there essentially. Talking about how it's important to express and release our emotions. There's not a lot of guys like me doing that.
No, there's not.
I'm perfect for the job.
Where do you find inspiration?
Inside of me. Okay. Inside of me. Yeah, it's getting really having a great relationship with that voice. Right, that voice of instinct. I don't like to say intuition, because I feel like intuition carries a very mystical handle, and it sways people away from this emotional space. So I like to say instinct, because I believe
it sounds more like clinical.
Yeah, right. And that's really what it is too, right? We used to live in a time where it was like, oh, I hear a bird. Okay, I'm just gonna do this. Oh, I hear like the wind's going this way. Okay, boom, here we go. Right? There was no mental. Right? It was a lot of just acting and being and doing. Now that based off our lifestyle and based off how humans have evolved, we've established this mental voice that's came in, because now there's space and time for it. And we've been able to create more peace for ourselves, which actually inherently brought a little more chaos, because now we're all in our heads. Yeah. Right. But being able to tap back into our ancestral way of being, which is instinctual and operating from a place of, boom, I know this to be true. This is it. Here we go. I'm doing that. Okay. Boom. Here it is. Boom. This. Okay, that didn't work out the way I wanted. Okay, boom, pivot. Okay, pivot. Right. So being able to tap into that place of instinct inside of ourselves, but we can't do that when there's all this emotional shit stuck in the way of us being able to have that relationship. And the best example I can give, it's weighing, but it makes it very unclear, because everybody says, listen to your intuition. Well, what the fuck?
Yeah, I couldn't.
I got 50 voices in my head right now. And I don't know what's my intuition.
That's why it took me so long to decide to break off my relationship. And it got to a point where someone said to me, you got to stop consulting other people, like, because they keep giving you their opinion, and now you have like 100 voices in your head. And like, but I couldn't tap into myself because I was so unsure of myself. It's hard.
100%. And that's where, like, the best way I can describe the best example that I have is you're looking down at a fire. Right? You're looking down at a fire, and there's like an ember burning in the middle of it. You can't see it because it's like a fire where you just peed on. There's all this smoke all over. You put water, whatever. Right? There's all this smoke coming up, right? And you can't look down. You can't see that burning ember right in the middle of the fire below you. Right? So you try to like kind of move it out of the way, but just smoke, go away. Oh, bad feelings go away. Over optimism. No, let me just try to willpower my way into happiness. Smoke, move out of the way. Right? The smoke's all of the emotional baggage that we have inside of us. Right? But eventually what happens is we realize, hey, I can't move the smoke out of the way. So there has to be something bigger, a bigger force that comes in and moves the smoke out of the way, so we can see the ember and know exactly where it's at, so we can reach down and grab it if we want to. Right? And so that's through going in and feeling and experiencing a lot of these emotions at a deep, deep level, allowing that clarity, that path to the ember to emerge much more efficiently. The smoke gets cleared out that way. Right? And so then we can say, boom, there it is. Okay, now I can grab it. I can do what I want with it. Right. And that's what really this process is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know nobody's the same, but typically, how long do your clients work with you to kind of really reach that place of where they can grab that ember? I'm sure it depends on where they're at in their life, the level of the trauma that they've experienced, how aware they are of it, like their desire to actually want to make a change. Of course, all factors in, but like, is there an average amount of time that people spend working with you, or it really depends?
4 months is the foundation.
Okay.
That's where even it's funny, because even the people that come in like, oh, I've done a lot of this work already, that they actually haven't, because they haven't done any of the feeling. In the
way that you're coaching them through it. And also
the healing's in the feeling.
Yeah.
If there's no feeling, if it stays up here.
Like, think about people who come to me and say, oh, I've done this and this diet. I've not, like, I'm very big into coaching macronutrients, but I'm not a macro coach, because there's so many other things that I look at. Mental health. I ask my clients to journal, daily affirmations, give me lots of biofeedback. Like, I had a client the other day that I told her, I was like, forget all this stuff about macros. I was like, you need to make a fucking vision board, because like, I was like, you don't know what you want. Like, we have to get your motivation is an emotion, and it comes and it goes. Like, motivation is not going to get you through this. That's why you've tried 100 diets and they don't work. We need to find your inspiration. And so I agree with you of this idea of like the 4-month foundation, because I won't take on a client unless they commit to 12 weeks with me, because if they can't do at least 3 months, like physically the body needs that amount of time to see like a noticeable change, just period. Like scientifically, I don't care how fast you lose the weight, but like the mental, we're only like just barely tapping into it. And ideally like then, and I'm curious what you think about this, once that client does like lose the weight and get to where they think they want to be, I think the maintenance is harder. So I really encourage people, if they're 3 months in, 6 months in, and they've been working with me for a while and they feel like, oh, I can do this on my own, they can, because they have the tools. But when they leave me, they lose a level of accountability. That's kind of why they want to stick around and working with me. And I think it's harder to maintain your weight a lot of the time than it is to essentially lose it. So in your case, like, let's say someone's like, what is there a transition period through those 4 months of the person working with you? Like the first, let's say 2 months or so, they're really like identifying and sitting with the emotions. And then the second half, it's more about like actually like using that to accomplish what they're hoping to accomplish. Does that timeline, I'm sure it looks slightly different for everybody, but what is that like in your coaching?
Yeah, it definitely is. It depends on, what I always say is we have to take out the low hanging fruit first.
Sure.
So in order to get to that emotional state, for some people, there's a lot of layers.
Could it take that whole 4 months?
No.
Okay.
No. But there's a lot of survival mechanisms that are at play for some people that can't get in the way of tapping into the emotions. So that might be, hey, I'm in a position where I don't know if I want to be with this person for the rest of my life or not. I don't know what I want to do. So we go in and we find massive clarity surrounding that circumstance. Okay. And that gets handled, right? Maybe there's another thing where it's, okay, well, I don't know where I want to live with my life or where I want to live now or do, right? And so then we tap into that, we handle that. And sometimes there's these survival-based needs that we have that have to be addressed before we can be in a safe position to even tap into those emotions. Right. There has to be this level of safety that's felt inside of somebody before they can do that. Now we tap in every call, but for some people it takes a couple of weeks to really get to that deep emotional state. Other people, they're like, I surrender, I'm here, let's just go in.
Yeah.
But it's all very different depending on the person.
What type of coach would you call yourself?
Yeah, I'm the genie for heart desires.
I like
Just
it.
leave it at that.
Yeah, I like it.
Because the place most people are at when they get to me is that they're feeding the desires of their insecurity. So most people are trying really hard to feed the desires of insecurity, to not have to feel. That's why we do that. That's why we establish addictive behavior. That's why we work our asses off a lot of the times. That's the demographic of people I work with. The other people glorify, but really what's actually going on is they do it to not feel a certain level of pain. Most of the first 4 months is unlearning a lot of the crap that, like I like to say, unlearning the crap that they learned that they should like or be like to cover their insecurity and tap into a whole different level of understanding of what their heart desires for themselves. I know that sounds a little bit like out there, but I would just want to create that separation between desires of insecurity and desires of the heart.
Yeah.
Right. And so that doesn't mean it's angel devil. I also want to say that it's not angel devil, right? It's just desires of the heart. There's no tie to dark and light or whatever it is. Just desires of the heart. Being able to tap into that place of knowing what's right for them. So a lot of times people think they know what they want, and we're taught that we should set goals and then we should know what we want and pursue those things. But I would say 99% of people are not even in a position to actually know what the fuck they want.
Yeah.
They have no idea. They're making decisions for what they want and for the rest of their life, and these big goals based off what they think that they should want, based off of their current life circumstances. Right? So I help people understand what the desires of their actual heart are, so they can pursue those instead of these synthetic desires that people come up with to try to appeal to a part of themselves that's insecure.
Yeah, I think that's real. I think that's so powerful. And I like the point you made about goals, especially too, because it's really easy for somebody like myself to operate from that place. As a fitness coach, I am very goals oriented. So in your case, I was going to ask you this earlier, and I think I can tie it back here. You made the point very early in our conversation about everyone going through some type of trauma. And I'm curious for you, one, have you identified what that trauma was? Was it the experience with football and the neck injury? And your way of dealing with that, and then that really took you to the place that you are now? Because I think your own life journey illustrates the point that we don't know what we want, because I'm pretty sure that your 9-year-old self who said you were going to be in the NFL certainly didn't anticipate us sitting here having this conversation about what you do now.
Yeah, I've definitely dove in deep, and that's probably a conversation for another day, as far as how deep I've really gone in understanding myself and why I am the way I am.
How do you help other people tap into that in your coaching sessions with them? Is it just like the way you ask them certain questions, and how do you really get them to like open up to you?
Yeah, it's a really complex equation, but that's where a lot of my learning and understanding of people comes into play. So that's one of the most powerful, important parts. But then it's getting people in such a place of relaxation that you could almost call it a level of hypnotism. It's because it's that level of comfort and relaxation, right? And so when people get to that state, it allows for any answers that need to come through to support what we're talking about to come through. And so when we can get people that place where they're in that almost state of nothingness through a certain level of expression, it can allow different things to come up, like, holy shit, this is where this comes from. Oh, this is why I'm this way. Oh, this is where this comes from. So people can start to actually create a separation between themselves, right, and who they believe, they think that they are. And so the best way I can describe it is how I describe to all my clients is, right now, most people, 99% of people, are in this state of trauma, me and my traumas. And this is just me, and this is just who I am. Right? There's this no different. You can't tell the difference between what fingers my left hand, what fingers on my right hand, right? No. So we can't. So it's just this big mix of me and who I believe I am based on my traumas. And so what we do is we go in and get revealed. I would say revealed the things and the people that have taught us that we need to be a certain way, not to blame, but just look at objectively, right? Very objectively, not to blame, objectively. And so there can be this greater understanding of knowing, hold on, whoa, I'm actually this way. I actually have Keyen. I actually have this deep desire to play in the NFL, and we'll do anything I possibly can do to get there, actually because of this. Holy shit, that's where this comes from, right? And so once we can conceptually grasp and understand some of these things, now it is a little bit mental, which there is a bit of the mental part to it, but we can understand that, hey, this is like more me. This is why I do some things I do, and where I get some of my personality traits. So then we can start to have this happen, right? So now we have me as a sovereign individual and all my traumas. So now there's this relative differentiation between themselves, right, or myself and my traumas, right? So they're still there, they're still guiding and leading me. But now I've been able to say, okay, at least there's a separation that I know is there between me and these things. I know
your
why
identity isn't the trauma anymore.
There it is, right there, baby. So then what we do is through the rest of the process, we go in and we feel a lot of the things that need to be felt so we can further create the separation. That's where it's all feeling from there on out, where it just begins this process of separation. Okay, so then we have me inherently in and of myself, independent of my traumas, being able to tap into that place of heart inspiration that I'm talking about and operate from this place of instinct without having to go to the head to have to figure everything out.
Wow. That makes so much sense, but it's like, I think it's probably such hard work for people to like get to the level of being like, okay, this is where I need to go with it. Like you don't realize it, and you can't, because you don't have the method and the tools to actually like observe yourself and separate. And I think that's why meditation is becoming so popular. But look, meditation is so hard. Like it really is very difficult. And like people don't want to sit with it because, and I probably, based on what you just said to me, I'm now analyzing that meditation is probably harder because we're not comfortable sitting in our emotions. And it's like, we're making it hard because we want to close ourselves off to what may come up in that process of like just sitting and being and going through it.
Certainly. But if you think about it, like it makes perfect sense. We've had this self-fulfilling prophecy of saying that I'm not safe to feel.
Right.
So if somebody's by themselves in just a meditative state, why would the part of their brains that's still on allow some of these emotions to come up and come through? It wouldn't.
Yeah.
It won't, right? Unless somebody feels like they're in this place of like, where it's forced,
safety,
psychedelics, right? Psychedelics do a phenomenal job saying, all right, you're not letting yourself feel, bam.
Yeah.
Here it is, right? They do a great job of that. Right. But also having somebody that can facilitate that. There's, Vipassanas, people that do 10-day silent meditations where they know things are going to come up and they have a support system. But also, I mean, like, having somebody that can facilitate that,
Sure.
and people know that they can facilitate that is one of the most powerful things. But just starting off, I don't know. It depends on how connected people are with their own emotional states, but if they can give themselves permission. But I would say for me personally, and most people that I work with, it is very difficult alone to sit and actually find that in meditation. Because actually, here's the funny part. Most of the time, the majority of people that are in this space of high performance and high achieving, we just use meditation as a thing to get us more clear about how to do what we want with our
things. I know.
Right. So it's not even actually used for the purpose
for what it's actually supposed to be.
It's for
clear
performance.
The mind. Yeah.
Right, but the moment that you make it about performance, the moment that it no longer becomes the thing that we actually
that's really
need
fascinating.
it for,
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
So that's also really interesting how that works. Throw that in there.
And how has your coaching evolved in two ways? As you've worked with more people, what have you kind of learned from that? Because I know you did make the comment earlier and it makes perfect sense. You've had to learn a lot about people, how to interact with them, how people respond to different things, your body language, attitude, emotion, delivery. How has that impacted the way that you coach? And also how have your travels and places you lived and the people that you've experienced in doing so impacted your coaching as well?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. And I would say, Krysta, that I wouldn't even separate those two questions. I would just say it actually has nothing to do with, I mean, there is some in the technicalities as far as how I do things with people, certainly with as I've gotten more experience, but my ability to facilitate this practice, to do it the highest level possible, all comes down to me going through all of it within myself. And the more that I find sovereignty in myself, independent of my upbringing, independent of ways of being that I felt like I've had to be because it's provided me a certain level of safety and protection, I get 100 times better in my practice. I'm my number one client. So the more I get more sovereign in me, the better I become at being able to facilitate this. And to give you a little more insight into that, a lot of people, what they'll do in the context of a coaching session is they'll be so focused on the individual in front of them. But actually most of my attention, I would say over 50% of my attention is actually on me and how I'm feeling.
Because do you discover your own feelings in coaching different people?
No, not from that standpoint, but from me knowing about how I'm feeling, I know what needs to happen next in the context of that session.
Okay.
So it's not me. I'm actually, it's probably one of the most selfless things that I can really do is tapping into myself in the moment of a coaching experience, because I can actually tell what's happening before the other person does based off how I'm feeling it.
Right. Like it's like not, your feeling is anticipating what's going to come up for them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Very, very summed up. That's what it is. So, but the more sovereign I become in my own emotional state, the better I become at being able to know and have confidence in what I know is happening in the context of a coaching session. So it's been pretty incredible to see that, based off what the foundation of what I'm teaching, I'm a direct byproduct of that, been able to work with some really powerful people because of the level of emotional sovereignty that I've been able to create in myself.
How does your family feel about what you do? What do they think about it? Have you ever done it with any of them, or do you separate it because of the connection?
That's an incredible question. And there's been some willingness to go in there that we've done and facilitated, and my family's definitely reaped the benefits of it. But I would say more than anything, my family's reaped the rewards of it, not through me consciously doing a coaching practice with them, but through
because of how
the healing, the healing and facilitation of changes I've done in myself, not through the direct conscious trying of getting them to do anything that I've done, because I don't do that. That's fucking exhausting.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
But through me,
one thing I've learned recently.
Right. Very exhausting. But through me just making the change in myself, then as a byproduct, them being able to heal through that. Right. The buck stops with me as far as the trauma that's been passed down through the generations of my family. Right. So through just me being able to go inside of myself and really unlearn a lot of the crap and things that I've taken on and done to cover insecurity, it almost gives them permission to do the same. Right. And I wouldn't say it's just my family. It's the same thing with my coaching as well. People feel that when they're interacting with me, they feel that change and shift in me, which gives them permission to open up and do the same. Right. So I have had individual sessions experiences with them, which has been incredible. But outside of that, most of it is primarily just the
how you interact with them. Yeah. So what has it been like for you dating people or having relationships with the sense of self that you've been cultivating if they're not at that level? Does it cause conflict?
Well, I would make the argument that anybody that I attract into my life with deep emotional connection, there's some element of the mirror effect.
Okay.
Right. So I've been able to work through a lot of my stuff, but whoever shows up in my life, they are a direct byproduct of some things that I haven't resolved in myself.
Sure.
So on paper, we might look at a situation and be like, wow, Keyen's worked through a lot of this. This person hasn't, based off of the X and O's and data of their life experiences. Right. But really, at the end of the day, every relationship that continues to be brought into my life is a lot of beauty that I have in me, but also the parts of me that I haven't resolved.
Okay.
So I think that's really powerful to acknowledge, and it can be at times frustrating because for me personally, because to know that there is those things like, oh shit, I thought I worked through this.
I keep working on this. Yeah.
I thought I got through, right? But being open to the idea there is still things inside of me that I have to resolve. And a lot of people can get really caught up. And I have done this in the past, which is very easy to do, of playing that game right there.
So with that, do you still have a coach? Because you mentioned that you worked with somebody to get to the level that you're at today. Do you still work with them? What kind of value do you think in having coaches? Because I have multiple coaches. I have business mentors that I consider coaches. I have a life coach. I have a nutrition coach myself. So I wonder what your opinion is on that and what that relationship is like in your life today.
Yes, I do still have a coach. I say for everybody, having a skills coach, so somebody to teach us how to do the things that we like to do, and then having you can say an energy coach, you can say an emotionally release coach. There's not a lot of us, to be honest with you, yet.
No.
But having an emotional releasing coach and a skill coach are things that are super important. I've been very fortunate to have attracted both in one, which has been phenomenal. Cool. So I've been working with him for a while now, but it's not just for my own emotional release. It's also part of the financial part that comes with attracting more money into my life, right? Course. Having somebody that I can dump money into to help me, but more so to get over my own scarcity
mindset,
right? Surrounding money is also really powerful to have. So having a coach that I have, that I'm so fucking thankful for, that's helped release a lot of things in me emotionally, facilitate the space to do that, but also working through some of the financial scarcity parts too, is super powerful. So there might be a season where him and I separate and we're not together, which I'm sure there will be, absolutely. But then there'll probably be a season where we get back together and then maybe do some more stuff. Or there's somebody else that I feel really inspired and pulled to operate and work with if and when I want to learn another skill. Because I might feel inspired, a month from now to start transitioning into something different, right? If there's one thing that I've been able to find and do with myself is I've been able to fall in love with the ambiguity of life. And now there's still parts where I get hit in the face and resist the change, but then I think my turnaround time is pretty quick relative to most people. Yeah, so that's what a lot of this is. At the end of the day, that's what all of this is. Change is the only thing in our lives that will continually remain constant. Yeah. Being able to fall in love with the ambiguity that comes with change is really a lot of what life's about. So the more we can get on board and get on the boat to go down river, while still consciously making, maybe taking a tributary off in a different direction when we'd like to, I feel like it's so much of the struggle with many people. And I would say personally for myself as well, being able to do that. But that's what so much of life is being able to get on the boat and going down and be able to be okay with the ambiguity and the change that comes. Totally. There's a lot of vulnerability with that. And that's the conversation.
100%. Yeah. No, for sure. I think what you just said is my biggest takeaway from our conversation. And I have one more question before I go into our quick little lightning round and end it on a lighter note. I know you've shared a lot about your coaching method has been developed out of reading a lot, studying a lot of people, your own self-discovery, most importantly. Do you think that the type of work that you're doing will eventually have some sort of coursework around it for someone to become a coach like you? Like, let's say somebody listened to this and they're just like, oh my God, I feel inspired by what Keyen is talking about. And I want to be able to, first of all, I think they'd have to go through the coaching experience as being one of your clients to really learn the process.
There it is.
Of course. Do you think there will become certifications and this become it is a very specialized field, but do you think it will become more formalized?
Yeah, this is the future. This is the future by far. Like there's people still not operating like in the space. I'm at the forefront of it.
Totally.
This
I've
in
never
10 years,
like it's
this will
like
be the future.
I've never heard of your type of coaching before, but at the same time I have, because I can think of 7 coaches that individually do what you do. You just like have wrapped it up into one and packaged it in almost like, I don't want to say the word that's coming to my mind is abstract, probably because people are uncomfortable with emotions. So that's why I'm like thinking of that. And I feel like abstract has that, like, you can't tangibly put your hands on it sort of thing. But it's like it exists, just not in the form of the way that you do it is harder to find, is rare.
Yeah, certainly. And to answer your first question about somebody that would like to potentially get into this space, they have to go through it. That's the beautiful part about it. There's no textbook that you can read, right? There's no kind of podcast episodes that you can listen to be able to facilitate this kind of change. The only way I'm able to do it is through going through it myself and continually going through it, right? Continually. And that's the cool part, is I continue to evolve and change and get more me than I've ever been every day. Yeah, they have to go through it. And that's where I have clients that are coaches that do embody this, and they just fucking crush it now, which is so cool.
That's amazing.
They bring this into their practice because this should be the foundation for every coaching practice. Because if this isn't there,
this is why I'm asking you the question, because like I'm seeing so many parallels to like the first thing that came to my mind when you talked about emotion, because of my nutrition perspective, I immediately went to emotional eating and like how food is just a legal drug, because it really is for a lot of people. And so how can I now increase and improve my coaching tactics to incorporate this idea of like accepting your emotion for what it is? So that's kind of where my brain was going with that. And I can imagine if somebody else who might be a fitness coach who's listening to this, I hope that is a takeaway from them listening, because like we can't evolve as coaches and help more people unless we continue to do the work, to your point exactly, of continuing to evolve and embracing the change and everything. So I love that. And I am so appreciative of your time, and I want to be respectful of your time. We could probably talk for hours, and I would absolutely love to have you back on the show again. And we will make that happen. But I end all of my podcast sessions and episodes with a quick little lightning round. So we've had a pretty deep conversation, and I'm going to take it like a little more fun and lighter and quick hit answers. I think of these off the cuff, nothing is planned, and it'll be like 75 more seconds of your time, and then we're done. You ready?
Let's rock and roll.
Okay. Favorite place you've traveled to?
Oh my gosh. I'm in love with Rio. I'm in love with this place. So Rio.
What's the coolest like sightseeing or just adventurous experience you've had in being in Brazil?
It's the combination of everything. I have the mountains, so we can go hiking out in the Amazon and the forest, but also the ocean is incredible. I literally, outside my place right now, I have a beautiful view of the mountains. I have a view of the ocean.
That's awesome.
And the water's perfect. It's an opportunity for me to be able to learn a new culture. But really it's the balance. I love the ocean, which I lived in Miami for a while, but also having the mountains there too. The combination of all of it is something that can't be matched.
Yeah. What was the most surprising thing for you about the Brazilian culture? And I'm going to ask you the same question for Colombia, because you live there.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe it wasn't a surprise, but it was more so the openness of the culture is incredible. I know Brazil is one of the most open cultures that there is, as far as like emotional expression and dancing and all that kind of stuff. But it's in the dating scene, it's definitely very much like that too. So like it's almost like, if somebody if you don't kiss somebody maybe on a first date, it shows a sign of disinterest. So I'm like, oh, okay, very interesting. So
that's so different. American, we'd be like, oh my God, that's so fast.
America is like, whoa, no, right? But it's more that way here. So I would say probably that. I knew it was going to be open and expressive, but I didn't. I guess, being from the U.S. and I have transitioned because Colombia is very open and expressive too, but
you had like that buffer in between. Yeah.
But
this is another level. So same question regarding Colombia. What was the biggest surprise or like maybe like eye-opening experience that you had there?
The pace of life. It's kind of the same thing here. It's incredible to be able to go and experience a different pace of life, especially for me. I lived in Miami for a couple of years, surrounded by the entrepreneur crowd and community of do more, make more things happen. Forward. For me, in my mind already, since I remember when I was 6 years old, I told my mom I was going to be saving money for my honeymoon. So my mind inherently like right? Crazy, right? So my mind inherently thinks forward very far. So for
Yeah,
me,
me too.
being in the Latin American culture, which
It
is much
forces you to
more,
be in the present.
I'm here. This is just
Yeah.
my life is just here right now. This is what I'm doing. I'm not thinking 5 years down the road. I'm just kind of living. It's been beautiful, beautiful contrast for me to experience being an American, being the way that I am by nature, to experience this other side of how things are in life and being able to take that and use a lot of that for myself. Probably that.
I love that. I actually very recently have personally, obviously, I'm not traveling to Brazil, but I have met a lot of new friends that are of the Latin American culture. And that's probably the biggest difference in the way we look at life. And it's been a good lesson for me because they reiterate to me without them even realizing what they're doing, like, just live in the moment. And it's hard to do. It's because we're not conditioned to operate that way here. So that's really fascinating. And I appreciate that. And I think that's really cool. What was the most, to take it like a little more of the business route, having worked at Equinox, being in corporate fitness, what was the biggest lesson, transition, or just kind of takeaway that you had from working in that environment to now doing this on your own?
I'll never work for anybody ever again.
There you go. I like it. I like it. And what do you like to do in your free time? Like when you just want to like tap out, chill, not constantly examine your emotions and just be, what do you like to do?
I love going to the ocean. I love my good friend and I that lives here with me. We love just putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations. So I do a lot of that. Just like if it's like, hey, go talk to that girl, or hey, go do this.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I was like, okay. And so it's just doing stuff like that. Being exposed and trying new things, I absolutely love. But I do love just also just kind of being by myself too. I love, like, if it's going to the ocean, just kind of like being in the water, and I'll be laughing my ass off by myself in the water. People looking at me might think I'm a crazy person.
Yeah.
Yeah, my buddy and I both do that. We'll talk about people looking at us, but yeah, I like to try new things. I like to do sporadic in the moment things, but I also really like to just kind of be by myself and if I want to zone out on my phone for a little while, I'll zone out on my phone for a little while. Like I stuff that whatever I feel inspired to do, I like to do.
So would you label yourself as an introvert or an extrovert?
Neither.
What would you call yourself?
Well, that's kind of the purpose of all of this.
Yeah. Like, so you're nothing.
To break out of labels, right?
Yeah.
I would say there's seasons, short and long at the micro and macro level where I like to be more secluded by myself. Yeah. Like 2020 was a huge year for me of just kind of being like in my own space.
Right.
But before that, I was in a season of being around a lot of people all the time, being in different groups and interacting with all different people. So I would say I don't have a label. I like to listen to that inspiration inside of me and flow with it. That's it right there, baby.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and for this really just like truly enlightening conversation. I have learned a lot about myself, and I think that speaks to exactly what you said about your own coaching. And when you go through the experience of coaching someone else and anticipating additional emotion, I think you just, even in regular conversation, you definitely have that effect on people to be able to get them to kind of like examine their own self through someone else's experiences or through the conversations that they're having. So I really appreciate it. I learned a ton today, and I hope that everybody listening has been able to have some pretty massive takeaways from this conversation, and it won't be the last time we have it, that's for sure. So last but not least, where can we find you? Where are you on? I know you're not a huge social media guy, but you are there. You're on there. So how can we get connected with Keyen if we want to talk to him more?
You can find me on the beach in Rio. You can come visit.
There you go. I'll come. Yeah. That's a good invitation to go visit Keyen.
Exactly. There it is. But on Facebook, so I'm not very active. Keyen Lage. I'm sure you'll put the spelling.
Yes, I will. I'll put all of it down in the show notes.
Yep. And then my website, you can communicate with me through my website, keyenlage.com. And then Instagram is probably, it's kind of it's not a lot on any social media, but it's probably the more I'm most active. So Instagram probably best. Perfect. Keyen.lage is my Instagram. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Go get out on the beach because I'm sitting here. It's like 18 degrees with my hat on. Super jealous, but enjoy. And thank you again. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. For everybody who tuned in, please remember that the best way to spread the message on this show is to share it. I'm so grateful for all of the guests that I have the opportunity to connect with in such an open platform and able to create an environment where people can be raw and honest and real. And if there's anything that you took away from the show that you think could benefit somebody else, make sure to send it to them, text them, post it on your social media, whatever you got to do. Leave a review if you liked it. This has been The Fix, and I have absolutely loved linking up with Keyen Lage. Thanks again. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Krysta.